I think that's why yesterday's Kennedy event, to me, I was shocked. I don't know what you. I mean, you've spent more time with. I've never met Kennedy. You've met him a few times, right? So maybe you weren't as shocked as I was, but I was completely shocked in his presentation. You were talking about the Overton window. I think, again, I'm not pandering to Trump or Kennedy, right? I might criticisms of both, but I think that, I really got to credit them and respect them for like shifting the narrative so wildly into left field. It's so wildly down the line because I think us Bitcoiners get kind of lost in just the news, right? Kind of like how you have, if you see 10 headlines talking about some company buying $5 million of Bitcoin, that has a similar emotional, or that has a disproportionate ratio of brain energy and attention given to it compared to, Kennedy, who's literally outlining a plan, if he's elected, which obviously most people don't think he would be, but if he was, we're talking literally thousands of times more money, right? Maybe Kennedy's speech might, in most Bitcoiners, be a 10x bigger deal in their emotion, even though it's actually in numerical terms, like literally 10,000 or 100,000 times a bigger deal. So anyway, I really gotta credit them for.
Can you hit the bullet point, the highlights of his speech? He said he's going to order the
Kennedy,
Treasury to buy so much Bitcoin per day to hit 4 million Bitcoin balance.
Well, and he said that within the first minute of him being on stage. I was in the very back of the auditorium because there's no way I'm waiting 2 hours in line to get in the building. So I got there like just minutes before Edward Snowden just finished up his talk. And so Kennedy comes out. I'm like, okay, we're going to probably have, 30 minutes of chit chat, oh, Bitcoin, great, free, like very generic stuff. And then at the end, he's going to announce one big announcement. But then, boom, within 60 seconds, he's like, yes, I have studied Bitcoin hard. I want America to buy 550 days to hit 4 million. I'm like, whoa, what? I was completely shocked. Then he gave another like half dozen announcements or so. Then he talked for an hour.
4 million Bitcoin.
Right, 4 million Bitcoin.
So close to 20% of the supply.
Right, 19%.
Wow.
Right.
Staggering.
Yeah, I mean, the first thought in my mind... was, I was speechless because that's not. It's kind of embarrassing to say it actually on camera, but it's not something I considered. Like it didn't even cross my mind that he would say a number over 500,000. Like it was a number so much bigger. Now, of course, there are criticisms. Criticism number one is that his odds of being elected are lower than the Democratic or Republican nominees. Okay, fine, whatever. I don't think it matters. I think the Overton window is the really big deal here in particular, no matter which candidate's saying it. Because, Trump could say bullish stuff, Kennedy could say bullish stuff, then they could retract their promises, right? Ultimately, these are promises. Sure. And the power of the chair might change their heart or change their tune once they get into office, right? So, I think the Overton window is the bigger deal because if the presidential candidate says it, well, then what prevents a presidential candidate of somewhere else in the world copying it, right? So anyway, in regards to the 4 million, that was the thing that was shocking to me, just because it was a number so much larger than I expected. And then, after I kind of regained my thoughts for a moment, I thought it's like the math does not add up. There's 1.7 million Bitcoin left on exchanges, and I'm like, okay, where is the other? Like that's not even half of the 4 million. And that's not even, that's all of them. That's more than all the daily issuance forever in the rest of Bitcoin's history, the next century. That is more than double all the Bitcoin exchanges. And that's forgetting all the other Michael Saylors, the other 20. This is the thing people have to keep in mind. There are 800 billionaires with more money than Michael Saylor today, right? And Michael Saylor's had a significant net worth increase because of Bitcoin, obviously, right? And so, at the time, I don't know how many there were, but maybe 1,000. Like, there are hundreds of billionaires that have a higher net worth than Saylor personally, and also most of them, of course, have access to much larger companies than Saylor does, right? So, forget Michael Saylor, forget the 400,000, 500,000 ultra high net worth families with 30 million. And again, this is where the numbers kind of get messed up. So I'm from Michigan, and I'm proud to say that as of yesterday morning, Michigan, the SEC had a filing. It released that Michigan has bought $7 million worth of Bitcoin for our state pension, whatever, right? Which is basically nothing. It's not even 70. It's barely 70 cents for all the citizens of Michigan. But my point is that, us Bitcoiners get bullish about, oh wow, Wisconsin bought, 100 million. Oh wow, Michigan bought 7 million. That's great, right? But there's 400,000 families with, 20, 30, 50, 80 million. It's like, we can be excited about these cute little tiny 0.1 allocations from these pension funds. And they are a big deal because they're getting off zero. But it's like, okay, sure, Michigan's cool. They bought 7 million, but like multiply that by 400,000x, like all those families, that's like a 30% allocation for them, right? Yeah. So, I'm kind of going on a bunch of different tangents here, but it's like, you have hundreds of billionaires richer than Saylor. You have another, 1,000 or 1,500 more billionaires that don't have as much money as Saylor. All of them are going to be chasing Bitcoin. Then you have all the high net worth individuals. Then you have the 70 million millionaires. Then you have, what we would call the plebs, right? In Bitcoin, the average middle class, blue collar worker in America. But then, the thing I personally care about the most, then you have the other, 6 billion people that we tend to forget when we talk about these numbers, right? And this is really the bullish thing about Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is useless in the long-term future if there's no humanity to price in it, right? The only bearish case for Bitcoin in the long term is if humanity is bearish, right? Or human productivity and progress, right? And so to me, it's not just about, oh, wow, Bitcoin's going to be number go up because we're going to absorb all of the current wealth from these rich people, but it's to realize, wait, the minority of the planet is rich.
Yes. Right.
And Bitcoin's promise or Bitcoin's vision is that the majority of the planet becomes rich. Yeah. And so all of that context to say Kennedy wants to buy 4 million, okay, right. Good luck. I mean, really. I mean, I don't know if it's possible technically. I mean, it's either impossible or they have to force price up vertically.
Well, of course. Yeah, right. Absolutely. Yeah. Basically, everything you mentioned, I think, would be sufficient to trigger a hyper-Bitcoinization type event, right? You're literally, if he were to try and acquire 4 million Bitcoin,
right?
Everyone you just mentioned, it's going to put them in, give them a greater motivation to also participate in that acquisition spree of Bitcoin. Right. The one thing you didn't mention, I would add, that's very important is every other nation state in the world that's going to say, the global superpower has now adopted this Bitcoin strategy. Maybe we should think about acquiring some of that so we're not left at a disadvantage.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you get the entire, you basically just described everyone in the world, right?
Right.
All the millionaires, all the billionaires, all the plebs, all the nation states, all the capital in the world fighting over 4 million Bitcoin that's already not there. Like, what else could that be other than just this feeding frenzy and runaway price appreciation?
Precisely. Yeah. So, so I didn't sleep last night. Like, I've just been up all night because
Bitcoin will do that to you sometimes.
I know. It's not healthy. It's not good. I'm not advocating. I'm not happy about that. You're in your
20s. You can do it for now.
Well, I know. Like, it's a time. It's a season. Like, I am in a time in my life where I'm basically obsessed about Bitcoin because of. Well, as a side note, the way I look at it is that if I was born 100 years ago, I would have spent 15 hours a day or 24 hours a day, in a trench in some war, covered in, blood and maggots eating my foot or whatever, like the least I can do is be obsessed about Bitcoin and hopefully tilt the needle in a very, very tiny direction towards a better future. So, that's a side note. Like, I don't care. Like when I come to these conferences, I get like super, like just adrenaline, like just pushes through me. So anyway, I was up all night and I'm going to have to be up all day. Today's a pretty big day. Especially depending on what Trump says. But the point saying is I was thinking literally all night, about this because it took me by surprise. And this is something that Jeff Booth talks about. That I really like his mental model. You've probably heard Jeff talk about this, but if you are consistently surprised, then probably something's wrong with your worldview, right? And so, I frankly, I'm not often surprised in Bitcoin anymore at this point. I used to be when I knew very little, but now that I know a little bit more, I'm surprised less. I was surprised by Ethereum ETF being approved. I was surprised that we hit an all-time high before the halving. That really surprised me. But the Kennedy thing really, really shocked me. And so I forget where I was going with that. But But the point in all that I think I was trying to get to was just at the end of the day, I was thinking about it, many different aspects of it last night. And the thing that I think was really, to me, interesting was not just that Kennedy wanted to buy the 4 million Bitcoin, but the way that at which he proposed it. He proposed 550 Bitcoin a day for basically almost exactly 20 years to get to the 4 million. And I thought, that actually makes a lot of sense. That seems a lot more ethical than saying 4 million within 6 weeks or 4 million all at once, right? Because it seems like it's an intentional way to give everyone else in the world as much runway as possible to transition to where, if Kennedy went out and said, yeah, we're going to smash by 4 million Bitcoin day one,
no, that's not
that transition would be extremely chaotic. And so it was interesting to me. He said 550 Bitcoin and not a fiat number. That was the first thing that really struck me, because I think that's a really important distinction. And then that second thing was that he was trying to spread it out over time. Now, I do think there's a legitimate question of, can any nation state transition its fiat energy to Bitcoin ethically? Because fiat is not ethical. So I do think that's a legitimate question. But that question aside, I thought it was interesting. Kennedy seemed to be that he understood Bitcoin enough to do what I would argue that both of those things were right. That he was focused on stacking Bitcoin unit of account a day, not fiat unit of account, and that he was trying to give other people a chance, Americans a chance to also stack. Basically say, America's going to start buying Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Hint, hint, you should probably buy some Bitcoin in case it catches on.
Yeah.
And then, the concern though is that not all countries are that equitable, again, which I say in air quotes. Xi Jinping is probably not going to do that. If Xi Jinping or the CCP wanted to buy 4 million Bitcoin, they're not going to announce it to, their 1.5 whatever billion Chinese and say, yeah, we're going to buy 550 Bitcoin a day for the next 20 years. No, they're going to say, yeah, we're going to do it right now in the next, 6 weeks. We'll just print it, right? And so anyway, I think it's really interesting that we're at this point where these politicians are kind of talking about different ways to go. And I don't know. I think it's a lot more nuanced and complicated than just nation state print money, buy Bitcoin. I mean, at the end of the day, it is that simple, but it's also all these nuances of how do they do it where they protect their own self-interest as a politician, where they can get reelected. Because then the question is, well, let's say Kennedy were to be elected, smash by 550 the next 4 years, then the next candidate were to come in and say, oh, I'll buy 600 a day, so I'll pump your bags more, right? It's part of the, it's just so many questions that it's like, I guess now we have to ask. And each one has its own trade-offs. And ultimately, I want the one with the trade-offs that have the lowest probability of, conflict. Soft war turning into hard war.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. So the smoother the transition, the better it is for everyone involved.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money, and be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.